afternoon once again. It is my pleasure this week to introduce my colleague and friend, Brock Hirschner, who resides in Mechanicsburg with his wife and 2 daughters. Brock is a graduate of the Mechanicsburg High School and Lebanon Valley College. He is currently a senior account executive for iHeartMedia and has been for the past 20 years, and was the 2019 recipient of the Presidents and CEOs Club Award. Brock just finished his 11th year as radio co-host on the Old Barn Hockey Show, so if you're looking for a new podcast, please, and are interested in Bears hockey, please reach out to Brock. He is also the state coordinator for Operation Lifesaver of Pennsylvania since 2017. He's also the president of the Conrail Historical Society, and he recently published a 400-page book, Conrail, The Special Equipment Fleet, after 17 years of research. The book has been highly successful, with very few copies remaining, and met with great praise for the employee interviews, photographs, and technical data within the book. Brock has also been the technical director contractor for Mechanicsburg School District for almost 20 years. He enjoys reading biographies and historical books, especially on World War II. He greatly enjoys watching hockey, rocking out to live music, and visiting historical reenactments and air show. His photography mainly focuses on aviation and railroads. Please join me in welcoming Brock.
Thank you so much for the invitation to be here today. I'm going to kind of start off just doing a little bit of rail safety. I know we have one person in the room who really needs to listen about that, so we're going to dive into that for you. So, my name is Brock Hirschner, and I am the state coordinator for Operation Lifesaver of Pennsylvania. Operation Lifesaver is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, after being started in Idaho in 1972. In that time period, we have lowered the number of annual incidents from 12,000 in 1972 to around 2,200. So it's about an 82% drop, but still a lot of work to do. A train hits a car or a person every 3 hours in the United States. It's every 3 hours. Let me think about that. Just in the time that we're here, and today we'll have 8 incidents and collisions across the United States. Train pushes car half mile, 3 people die. Person struck and killed while walking on the tracks. Train collides with truck at crossing with multiple tracks. It happens every single day. Any time is train time. As you approach a crossing, always expect a train. Freight trains do not run on a schedule. Yes, passenger trains have a schedule, but that doesn't mean they're on that schedule. And there also may be trains that have been added to that schedule. There may be special trains that are happening that you're not aware of. So you always need to be expecting a train, any track, any direction. Vehicles, stopping distance when traveling at 55 miles an hour. Cars about 200 feet. A school bus, 230 feet. Tractor trailer truck, around 300. A light rail, 600 feet. A 100-car freight train, over 50 to 80. That's 18 football fields. That's over a mile. And that's a 100-car train. Many of the freight trains today are over 200 cars. The weight ratio from a train to your car is the same as your car smashing an empty soda can.
Wow.
Many of these collisions with the train, there may be some paint scratch, there may be a bent handrail or something. The train goes on. There's nothing left of the car. Flashing red lights warn of an approaching train and must be treated as a stop sign. Those lights, they're red for a reason. It's just like a traffic light, a stoplight. While they're operating and that red light is on, you have to stay there and stopped. Even if you think that the crossing is open. There may be multiple tracks, there may be a train coming from opposite direction that you can't see. Trains always have the right of way, even with emergency vehicles. Flashing lights with gates temporarily close the road when the train is approaching. You cross only when those gates are up and the lights have stopped completely. Driving around lower gates is dangerous and illegal. I talked about the multiple tracks. There may be a train that just cleared, but you can't see the train coming in the opposite direction on another track. Always make sure all tracks are clear and you have a safe distance to see before proceeding. Okay, listen up. Trespassing is extremely dangerous and illegal. Railroad property is private property, and it's a federal offense. Being on railroad tracks, even without permission, if trespassing, even if a sign is not posted. Don't take a shortcut across the tracks, as you can get seriously injured or killed. How many of you in the past have played on or walked on the tracks? Just raise your hand.
I'm not the only one.
Many people did this for years and years. And honestly, it was a lot easier to hear a train because the tracks were bolted together, so you would get that clickety-clack sound. Now it's all continuous welded rail. You don't get that sound. The engines themselves are a lot quieter. And when you're in front of the train, it's extremely hard to hear it due to the Doppler effect and other situations. So stay off, stay away, and stay alive. Recreational activities do not mix with railroad tracks. You are trespassing. Especially earbuds, they give you no chance, really. Train crews are not expecting people on or near the tracks. And by the time the train crew can see you, it's way too late. Bridges, tunnels, all private property. Trestles, and typically, in these instances, there's just enough room for the train to get through. There's nowhere for you to be. Many people believe they will be able to hear a train coming. I can guarantee you, you can't. Engaging in conversation, speaking on a cell phone, all these things lead to distractions near the tracks. So please, try and limit your distractions when you are near the tracks. Driving, walking, whatever the situation. Look both ways. Listen for the sound of a train. If you look and listen, you will live. So I know many of these things you already know, so I'm not going to hash on about safety things, but I will ask one question before I move on. Your vehicle's stuck on the tracks. You get everyone out of the vehicle. You get a safe distance away. Who do you call? 911 is a really good answer, but there's a better answer. If you are at the crossing, there's a blue and white sign. It's called an ENS sign, Emergency Notification System sign. There's a phone number on there, and there's also a specific ID for that crossing. Call that number first. Give them that ID number. It's going to get you directly to the dispatchers for the railroad. They're going to be able to stop the trains. Then, when the trains are stopping or stopped, they will be able to get you whatever assistance you need from 911 services. And they will be able to pinpoint exactly where you are to get those services to you. Because, you know, some towns, they have, okay, I'm at the Main Street crossing. Well, we have 5 crossings on Main Street. There could be more than one railroad involved. You give the wrong railroad, and suddenly the wrong railroad stopping trains, and the track where your car is, they're still moving. So take a look for that. It's at every crossing across the United States. You'll see that blue and white sign there. Don't go find a crossing, find that sign, and put that phone number in your phone. They're going to be different on every crossing because of the different railroads. So something to learn, know, and share with others. So now I'm going to kind of move into some of my photography. At 2 years old, my parents took me to Strasburg Railroad, and that is me. And that's about 40 years later, operating Norfolk and Western 611 about 200 feet down the tracks from where that picture was taken. I'm also the president of the Conrail Historical Society, And there's a picture of me doing some training for Operation Lifesaver and hazmat. So 611 has been visiting Strasburg Railroad for work and also to run excursions and so forth. Here you can see a brand new Amtrak locomotive with about 70 years difference between really the prime passenger engines of their day, pulling trains at over 80 miles an hour. And this is in the fall of 2019 that these pictures were taken. Here's a photo freight, which is when they have period freight cars that they will put behind the engine to make it look as if it is back in the period. This engine was built to pull fast passenger trains, but in its later days, as steam became the heyday of steam ended, they were relegated to pulling local freights and so forth. The same photo, quick funny story about this. These Amish were selling goodies to a lot of the photographers. They had whoopie pies, drinks, all kinds of stuff. So I knew we were going to have the train here, and I said, hey, I'll give you $5 if I can take your modern cooler and set it over here out of the picture for a minute, and as soon as the train goes by, I'll carry it back. So probably the best $5 I've spent in getting an absolute period photo without the modern red and white cooler there. This is what the engineer seat looks like. This is the throttle right here, the whistle cord, the brake. I will tell you that when I ran this engine, I'm over 200 pounds, and I had to put every inch of me into grabbing that throttle and pulling it back. I've never ever operated a locomotive that needed such power to move that throttle. But then once you got moving, you could almost move it with one hand. It was amazing, the amount of power. We did some special night photos with it. There were people actually came from all over the world for this night session in the style of O. Winston Link, if you know some of his work.
Thunder on the Blue Ridge.
All right. Although his work was all in black and white, or most of it was anyway. This is J Tower, which stands down there, which actually started out as Limo Tower in Lemoyne and was moved and saved down there.
Their meeting Strasbourg.
Yes. Now I'm going to take you on a quick journey across the country by train. In January of 2019, I traveled to Salt Lake City, Utah, via the Capital Limited and California Zephyr. Here we are pulling into Pittsburgh, coming off the Pennsylvanian at about 8:30 at night. You can see it was January, the icicles hanging down. The next morning, coming into Chicago Union Station, and leaving Chicago on the Zephyr. The great thing about this train is it has this car which is completely open windows. For some reason, on my particular journey, nobody used this car. I am at the back end of this car, and my seat, my coach seat, was literally in the next car, directly past it. And I sat in here for days. The only time that there were other people in this car with me was when we went over the Rocky Mountains. Otherwise, there were maybe 2 other people with me the entire journey in this car. And I don't know if they didn't know it was on the train or just boggled my mind, because it's an amazing place. The following morning, waking up in eastern Colorado, coming into Denver, there's a massive pioneer cemetery, with people that did not make the journey fully west as they had hoped to. The one thing they do at the station stop in Denver is all the windows get cleaned because of the journey that you're about to see going up through the Rockies. If you've ever been to Denver, the city itself is not very big, and I was shocked. You know, it's about the size of Harrisburg, honestly, city-wise. They're not tall skyscrapers, anything like that. But the suburbs, there's no room. They're absolutely packed in like sardines. And as we slowly get out of Denver, you can see a lot of the suburbs just absolutely packed with homes as we start to rise up above from the foothills into the mountains. In this area, just getting up into the Rockies, there's 27 tunnels. 27 tunnels in about 3 miles just to get up to the mountain. It was actually, I just got back from Colorado. I was there a month ago, and this is the Moffett Road, which is a complete dirt road, and I drove about 8 miles of it just out there. Just amazing, amazing scenery. And it was neat for me to see it in summertime too versus winter. But these are views just off the train, just right out the window. And these views you won't get any other way, because there's 3 things. There's the railroad, the Colorado River, and the Rockies. It was nice too at that time period when I went through, but there was a lot of river flow, so it wasn't just a frozen over river. I got to see a lot of wildlife as well.
Is that the front of the train and you're in the back?
That is the front of the train, yeah, yep. And I'm not even fully in the back, but
Okay.
I'm probably, I'm going to say probably 8 cars back at that point, and there's probably another 5 behind me. But it's neat too to see the topography completely change. You have granite, 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 and then all of a sudden you blink and you've got these gorgeous red sedimentary rocks. And the colors just completely change within minutes. It's just astounding to watch the world from your seat. This is getting into Utah at sunset. So I picked up my rental car, which was Dodge Challenger, and it got put through its paces, believe me. Because when you're driving north of Salt Lake City, there's not much. But I drove up to the Promontory Point, which is where the Transcontinental Railroad came together, and this was in 2019, so it was the anniversary year for that. So I took this road at triple digits, just so you know, because this is what you saw and saw and saw. So this is the area where the Transcontinental Railroad joined. You can see the telegraph wires where they actually telegraphed to the country that it was done. You can see the actual golden spike. Or I should say, it's a replica. But I arrived, the government shutdown had just ended. This was literally the first day they had been opened in months. So there was no one there. They handed me the replica golden spike. They said, I'm not going to charge you. They said, you just have to do one thing. Give this back to me before you leave. So they had shoveled out the spike, or the tie and so forth, so that I could actually see it, but everything else was like they were just opening up again. It was great, because I was there with a couple of friends, and that was it. Now I'm going to take you on a quick 7-day, 3,600-mile journey in July of 2019, chasing the world's largest steam engine, which had just been renovated and restored to running. And it actually just ran from Denver to Cheyenne this past week. It'll be the only time it runs this year. This is traversing west through Iowa and so forth. This is a Union Pacific Challenger and a diesel Centennial locomotive, which is the world's largest diesel locomotive. And this is in North Platte, Nebraska. But I don't know if you can see it, but take a look at the name on the station right there. It says Hershey. There's a Hershey, Nebraska, and that is the depot that was saved from there. So a little taste of home as I arrived to see what I was searching for. This is the big boy at over 1 million tons. I can tell you that when this goes by, the earth shakes beneath your feet. And it doesn't matter how far away from it you are, you feel the heat.
Surprised the tracks can hold it.
It's an amazing, amazing thing, and the tracks are checked prior and after when this train goes through, just to make sure. So this was on a public PR tour. You can see some people there off to the right a little bit. They're getting ready to stop here. They would stop, the public would get to see the engine, take some pictures, and so forth. They would service the engine while it continued east. This trip was through the Midwest. That is Ed Dickens, the head engineer and the head of the Union Pacific steam program.
How big is a typical steam engine? If that's 1 million, what would be a typical?
500 to 600,000. I mean, it's literally a double engine pretty much put together. You have double boilers, you have double sets of driving wheels. So much so that the first set of driving wheels actually swing without the top boiler. The boiler's static, so it'll swing and the boiler stays straight. So the next morning, chasing it further east. I always try and incorporate something to show where we are versus just a picture of the train. This is what's called a pan shot, so you can see everything is blurred except for the engine itself because we're in motion. This engine was a coal burner when it was built. It was converted to oil. So the first tender and the second tender behind it have water filled. And the third tender with the American flag on it has oil in it. This is one of those PR stops. So as an Operation Lifesaver representative, this just makes my skin crawl. But, you know, the railroad, in being super safe, they literally would shut the railroad down completely within 50 miles of these events. And they would happen for about 45 minutes to an hour. And there would literally just be thousands and thousands of people that would greet this engine as it came across. Most of these people had never seen a steam engine, let alone a big boy. But it was also great to see the old timers come out that had seen these run in the early 1900s. So it was really neat to see that, and then them with their families showing them, and then telling the stories about when they saw these run. And then heading out, I will say, I did like the juxtaposition of the antiques sign. So I had to get that in there when I did that. Then leaving, that was Columbus, Nebraska. So getting back on the route east. And then coming into Omaha, where it would stay on display for 2 days in downtown Omaha. Omaha is the headquarters of Union Pacific Railroad. So also, because of that, Union Pacific was started by Abraham Lincoln as the eastern terminus of the Transcontinental Railroad. So that's why they are headquartered there. So here it sits on display at a place called Home Plate. You can see the end of the rail is right there. This is their display track in Omaha that they put specific things for people to see. Just some detail shots. You can see that's the stadium where the College World Series is held every year in Omaha, right across the street, which is another reason why it's called Home Plate. And then my friend and I, we had taken our lights with us, so we lit it up at night. In Omaha, if you're traveling on the highway, this is one of the first things you see. It is high, high up on a hill. And what they had to build special trucks to get these up there, because these are each over 1 million tons each. And they had to get them up the hill, and it overlooks the highway. So as soon as you come across the river from Council Bluffs, Iowa, this is the first thing you see high up on the mountain. It's an engineering marvel that they got it there. And actually the day I was visiting there, they were presenting the plaque that was naming it a true engineering marvel. But here's how it looks at night. It's a pretty impressive sight to see from the highway. Woke up the next morning and that was right outside the car window. When I do a lot of these trips, I'll sleep in the car because I'm only sleeping for 2-3 hours a night, if that, because we're shooting night stuff all through the night. So I would never ever take any of my family along with me because it would be living hell for both of us, all of us really. So Transcontinental Railroad, these are called Z trains. They're their hottest trains. This is carrying a lot of your FedEx, UPS, stuff that's coming out of the ships on the West Coast and coming to the East. Of course, with my name, I always like to find the Brock silos across the country and incorporate those in. I was very lucky to find a windmill train. So these trains are huge. The windmill turbine blades are huge. And I found this car, I believe, had 82 cars on it.
Wow.
They're massive. I mean, these pictures don't do justice at how long they are. They extend over 2 cars. That's how long they are. You can see how far out they go. So they run in dedicated trains because of that.
I like the windmill in the middle there.
Well, see, that's exactly, because I caught this train further east and I was like, wait a minute, we just passed a windmill back there. So it's quick turn around and go back. And yeah, I'm always trying to do those sorts of things in the connection of my photography. Some of you may remember George Herbert Walker Bush's funeral and that he was carried on a train. The second car there with the flag on it, that was his casket car. So the first baggage door, which is right here, they had open so people could see the casket as it went by with a Marine standing there guard the entire trip. Next day, chasing it west into Iowa, sunrise. Waiting and waiting for the train, so I get a little artsy. I enjoy nature and including that in the photographs as well, because sometimes you're waiting and waiting. It's actually a double stack train behind the Monarch, out of focus. Then finally, the full train emerges. There's 18 cars on this train, fully sold out, raising money for the Union Pacific Museum. This is the type of traffic that accompanies this train. Miles and miles of backlogs and people trying to keep up with the train, get in front of the train. It can be very dangerous at times because you have people that are very impatient, and then you also have people running all over the roads trying to get back to their cars and so forth. Of course, my 20 years in radio, I had to get a shot with it in a radio tower as well. But here, I took this photo. It's actually, I'm in the same spot. I'm standing on top of my ladder, shooting over top of the corn, and then I just turned and there was this crossing to my right. But as I looked, look how small the cars are. one drive wheel of that locomotive is bigger than the cars. And then my last parting shot of chasing the train across the Midwest. So I truly hope you enjoyed seeing my passion for rail safety photography, always trying to teach people how to do photography with railroads safely. I do have my book up here. You can take a look at if you're interested. So I thank you for the invitation, Sean, and thank you for everyone's time today. Thank you.
Wow. What side does the engineer sit, and why do they sit on that side?
They sit on the right side. I don't know that there's a specific reason why that was chosen in the beginning. It might have been because many railroads run right side forward, and if there's multiple tracks, so it was just easier because if the conductor's talking to the engineer, he's there on the right side. Not all railroads do that though. Some countries also have different sides, so it's not necessarily that that's the case, but for the most part in North America for sure, right hand side is the engineer.
And is the gauge always the same, or does it change?
There's a standard gauge in the United States, but there are also railroads that they're called narrow gauge that ran before there was a standard gauge. Like where I was out in Colorado recently, there are a lot of narrow gauge railroads still there today. There's specifically one here in Pennsylvania called the East Broad Top Railroad, that if you like history, it is a Smithsonian exhibit straight out of the early 1900s. It shut down in the mid-1960s. Everyone thought they were going to come back to work the next day. They didn't. They shut down the railroad. So everyone left it as if they would be back the next day. It is an absolute treasure of the world to go visit and see not just the train and ride the train and so forth, but to go through the shops, because they built everything there on site. And the shops are all still there. They operate. They work out of those shops. It's an amazing place. But yeah, the narrow gauge is only 3 feet wide. What you see out here is almost 5 feet. It's a little short of 5 feet. But that's, yeah, standard gauges. That's what that is.
Where's this place you just referred to?
It's in Robezonia, which is about an hour, 15 minutes west of here. But it is well worth the time. At this time, they're only running diesel. They have 6 steam engines in their shop. One is probably going to be done by, I want to say October. And then their hope is to get all 6 of them running again. The rail line sat dormant for a number of years, about 9, and now there is new ownership that they're the right new ownership for it to save it. They have the funds and they have the people to do it correctly. So I expect that railroad to continue for many, many decades. Yes.
So I think it's between Steelton and High Spire, they're near the old Bethlehem steel plant. There were 2 old engines that for years and years kind of sat back in the weeds. And then not too long ago, I saw they had brought them up to the main track, and now they're gone.
They're not. Insight? They just moved them. They're moving them around the property. Okay. They have a lot of operations happening there, and they do make steel rail there. In the future, they're supposed to be making a lot more of that, and I think they're kind of getting them out of the way.
They look like they were historic, and I thought many times I should stop and take a picture because it was a great picture, and then they were gone.
Yeah, they're older locomotives that operated there within the mill, because the Steelton and High Spire Railroad is its own railroad within what was Bethlehem Steel, but they're still there. They're just hidden out of sight, and I think they're really just moving things around and getting the rail repatriated because they're going to have a lot more business here in the coming future. Yes.
A couple of years ago, I work right by the Elizabethtown train station. Are you familiar with it?
Mm-hmm.
What runs on there? So I'm on the Masonic side of the tracks in my office. I see trains going by all the time, and my office is right there. It was maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe before COVID. This car pulls up, and 3 guys jump out and they've got their cameras, and you know, they're communicating with each other. They run up the hill and then they stand there, and then this train goes by, and I'm not sure what it was. But obviously it was a special train. These guys were train chasers. Do you know what that could have been? Because I've never seen that before. We've been up there for.
Do you know, like, can you describe the color? I mean, it
might have been red.
So, okay, so I probably know what that is. Was it older looking engines, like vintage? Okay. So there is a man in Philadelphia named Bennett Levin who owns, well, I'll get my book because this dovetails right into my book.
That's a planning question.
On sale now.
So Bennett Levin owns these vintage engines, and he owns his own train. It's like operating model railroading in 1-to-1 scale. So Bennett has purchased some of these engines and returned them to their original Pennsylvania Railroad livery. So I guarantee that is probably what you saw Bennett taking his engines out for a spin.
How does he coordinate that with Amtrak and the?
It's just like chartering a train.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's probably hard to see, but
yeah.
those are the engines there, in the maroon and the gold, but they're actually the former Conrail engines that this entire book is about. Okay. And I guarantee he was doing that. He owns the most prestigious private car in the country is PRR 120, which is usually his tail car. It's an observation car. When the Pope visited, when Prince Charles was here, this is the car he rode in the United States between Philadelphia and New York City as they were doing visits. It's an amazing car. It was actually RFK's casket car as well. I've ridden it on a number of trips, and it's just absolutely astounding. So I'm sure that's probably what it was. Yes, sir.
We had the pleasure of riding from Chicago to the camp, to one of the big parks, national parks. 2.5, 3-day trip, sleeper, and plenty of windows to see out and look at everything. It was a great trip. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, there's 3 major routes west of Chicago. There's the Empire Builder, which might be the one you're talking about because it goes to Glacier National Park.
That's the one.
Yep. And then the California Zephyr, which I showed you. And then there's a Southwest Chief that goes down through the desert and so forth towards the Grand Canyon. I think those 3 trips I highly recommend, and then also there's the one called the Pacific Surfliner, which goes the coast of California, and you are literally on the beach on the coast. Like, people have to go across the tracks to get to the beach. You know, that's how close you are. It's an amazing, amazing route.
Oh, there's the one that goes up through the mountains too. Right down here.
Yeah, that's the Zephyr or the Empire Builder. Those 2.
No, I mean from north to south, from Seattle down to Los Angeles.
That's the Surfliner. So it's mostly on the beach, but then it cuts into the Sierra Nevadas a little bit as well.
I remember it being real hot.
Yeah. Yes.
So I think it'd be awesome to do the train from the East Coast to the West Coast. And I would have no idea how to do that. Where do you?
I leave from Harrisburg.
Go to E-Town.
Yeah, I mean,
Catch training, you kind of just keep going.
the Amtrak website is actually pretty good at if you just put in, I want to leave Harrisburg and I want to go to Los Angeles or, wherever it is, it'll show you the trains that you need to do, and then it gives you options, so you can kind of select, like, oh, I'd rather take this train and that sort of thing. The connections are not bad. Like, I leave out of Harrisburg 2:30 in the afternoon. I get into Pittsburgh around 8:30. I grab dinner, and then the Capital Limited picks you up right around midnight in Pittsburgh and heads to Chicago. So you're sleeping from when you get on there in Pittsburgh through to the morning in Chicago. You get into Chicago about 9 a.m. Gives you time to go. I stow my bags at the station and walk around Chicago for a couple hours, grab some deep dish, grab whatever. And then the California Zephyr typically pulls out of Chicago around 1:30, 2 p.m. that afternoon. Then you've got 2-3 days until you're on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So the timing works pretty well to do that.
I've done that too.
Yeah, they're fantastic trips, and I will tell you, like, if you're traveling with a group of people, to getting a bunk, getting a room is good. I personally travel a lot just in a coach seat.
Yeah.
And there's a couple reasons for that. I find I sleep better in the coach seat. On my first, actually the trip those pictures are from, there was a couple across from me. She was 82, and I believe he was 79, and they do the same thing. They're like, we used to buy a room, and then we realized how much more comfortable these seats were than the actual bed, because they almost fully recline, and underneath there's a piece that comes up that it's not just a footrest, it literally is a full cushion that holds your feet up. So it's not like you're just putting your feet, they're hanging there or anything. Take it for what it's worth.
I would go that way, not on the sleeper again.
Yeah, it just, you save yourself a ton of money, and I think the other thing you can do is you don't have to, stay on the train the whole time. You can get off at this stop, visit in that town for a day or whatever, and then pick the train up the next day.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways to do it. Via in Canada also has an amazing train called the Canadian that takes you up from Toronto to British Columbia up through the Canadian Rockies. Well worth it. I'm very blessed that I know a lot of private car owners that I get to ride in their private cars and really just slap on the back of
Hey,
these
can I
trains.
have your business card?
Buy the book.
Yes.
So how much does it cost to go from East Coast to West Coast, riding coach?
Riding, I can't answer that. And here's the reason I can't answer that. I travel for free on Amtrak. Yeah, because of my job, I travel for free on Amtrak.
I want a couple of your cards.
So I honestly, I can't answer that. Yes.
I got a quick story
Yeah.
about cabooses and flag stops. In 1950,